Giant stalker, dragon stalker, crypt stalker, demon stalker, rift stalker, grown stalker, crypt stalker, scourge stalker, wind runner. I'm a pony, elite skilled hunter. A death dealer, a life stealer. That's just the cost of being awesome sauce.
Welcome to episode 226 of the Hunting Party Podcast. I'm Dark Brew from thebrewhall.com and the Brew Hall on Twitter.
I'm Delirium from Thrill of the Wild and at Delirium Hunts on Twitter.
And I'm Artemis Howell from the Warcraft Hunter Union and at Artemis Howell on Twitter.
All right, today is Sunday, October the 4th, 2015, and we are broadcasting live on twitch.tv. You can participate in the live chat room where our lovely moderator, Ali Sander, is there to take your questions. And we've got an awesome show for you guys today. We've got a full house, well minus Bendek, of course. But joining us this week, we have Cliperol and Niix the Hunter, both from the Midwinter Guild, and they're going to join us here today. And we're going to talk about BlizzCon, hunters, and all sorts of good stuff. So, guys, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Hunting Party Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Cool. So BlizzCon, it's what are we, like just less than a month away now? So why don't we talk about some of the hunter plans and things we've got going on? Because I think we know a little bit more than what we did last time. So Artemis, you want to talk about what's going on with hunter planning and the party and all that for BlizzCon?
Certainly. I mean, first of all, big shout out to Miss Mo. Everybody knows her as Foxy Lady. She's been the one that's really been overhauling and driving this campaign to where it needs to be. Anyways, so full details. We still have to have a possible time and date for the party. I think we're still leaning on Friday night being our, potential hit back at the Hilton. We have some various ideas of where we're going to be doing that, but we'll have like a mat this time. I swear, hunters, and we'll make it so epic for you. We have really good amount of donations this time around as well. And this year, if you donate $5, you will be getting all the swag you need. This time, it won't be just free for all. Everybody comes in and, takes and takes. Basically, if you donate $5 or more, you will get the lanyard. We have new wristbands, and we're going to be doing shirt giveaways.
And Artemis, I see you're broadcasting from a tropical jungle somewhere, it sounds like.
Yeah. I'm truly giving out my all-around hunter experience. I'm just that dedicated.
I try to think who we had on the show one time who also had, I think it was Cliperol. He was another hunter that had birds. It had birds in the background when he would come and podcast with us. So, yeah, I guess having birds, it's a hunter thing.
Bark, bark.
So, yeah, so the T-shirts are awesome, by the way. I know we've talked about that, but they're real. The design is just amazing.
Yeah, who was the artist on that?
All right, so the credited artist who did this, and she is phenomenal, is Zoe Zazu. I'll link her Twitter handle for y'all.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm especially impressed with the way the gun turned out on that, because I don't think we had any real good images coming out of wherever it was, Gamescom, with a picture of the gun. So she did a really nice job kind of cleaning that up and making it look as pretty as the other two weapons on there. Yeah,
so if you guys are confused about the whole image concept, basically she decided to take the 3 artifact weapons from the next expansion on top of the Legion background, on top of the WHU letters, and just put them all together in one shirt design. So you have the Survival Hunter Spear, the Marksman Hunter Bow, and the BM Hunter Gun. Looks awesome.
I can't understand anything you say. I just hear birds.
Oh my god. One second.
She's not going to do anything bad to them, is she? What does that mean? 1 second.
Rest in peace, bird. Rest in peace.
Yeah. Just going to open the window and let them out.
2015 to 2015.
All right. Well, while she's doing that, why don't we? We really don't have much in the way of news, right? I mean, there's not much going on. So, Niix and Clip, why don't we just talk to you guys and find out a little bit about what you've been doing? I mean, you're both in one of the top guilds in all of World of Warcraft. You've obviously completed going through Hellfire Citadel on Mythic difficulty. So, what were your impressions of that raid, sort of overall this time around, especially Mythic? I mean, how do you think it sort of stacked up to some of the previous raids that Blizzard has done? Is it one of the harder ones, or easier, or what are your guys' takes on that?
I'm going to let Clipper answer this one.
I feel like it ranks pretty high up there in terms of like difficulty level. for like a general sense across the board. I mean, some of the fights felt kind of hard because the first couple fights were pretty easy, and then you got to like this gore fiend, which kind of like this basically essentially like cock block to the entire like other half of the tier or like the other half of the instance, and then you had a couple like easy bosses, and then a couple like really hard ones. So, I feel like it's a pretty good like difficulty across the board for like all raids, kind of like BRF for like an entire like Warlords kind of theme of raiding. So.
Well, that's sort of been our feeling about the raids in general, because I mean, this Warlords of Draenor seems to be somewhat of a down expansion overall. Not one of their better efforts. I mean, there were a lot of neat things in there, but the raiding I thought has been as good as it ever has been. I mean, they continue to do a really good job with these boss encounters, coming up with new mechanics and things like that. And I thought all the raids that they've done so far have been really good, and I've enjoyed them all so far.
Yeah, they've all been pretty good.
Yeah, I would definitely feel like Archimonde's probably one of the best bosses they've. I wouldn't say one of the best, but probably definitely one of the more challenging bosses they've come up with in a long time. So.
As the final boss, definitely.
Oh hell yeah!
I mean, how long did it take you guys to get that down? I mean, like roughly how many attempts did you have to go through for that?
I don't think we ever actually disclosed the actual legit
Uh-huh.
number. We're gonna try to downplay that. I hate to say it. I think it was like not as much as Exorcist. Definitely probably like the second most pulls. I think we had like 600 and I don't know something on it before we killed it. I think Exorcist had like 900 or some shit.
740.
740, yeah. I think we had like 630 or 50, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, like, how many pulls like in an evening do you end up doing then, with a fight like that when you're raiding on a night?
It kind of varies. Like, generally, of course, like when you first start off progression, you're gonna have a lot more wipes at a night because you're consistently wiping to the earlier phases. But as time goes on, like these are, like 10-minute pulls basically. So 10-minute pulls, 5-10 minutes to sit there. I don't know. You could probably do like anywhere from probably about like 40 pulls a night, maybe. We were basically raiding every day, so I would say maybe 40, maybe like 30 to 40, maybe on average.
Right. Which is pretty good. So, I mean, obviously you guys are hustling and getting back there and, pulling as soon as you can. I mean, and the other thing too, and I'm asking this, I guess, from the perspective, I know like I'm in a very, very casual guild. So we're just running heroic. And I know, on a fight where we're going to wipe, sometimes it takes like forever to, for everyone to die, like after you call the wipe, and it's like it's ridiculous. Like just stand in something, and people don't stand in something. But do you sort of approach it, especially with these multi-phase fights, where you just sort of try and get down that say initial phase to the point where you can execute it perfectly? Where even if you look like you could clear that phase, you might call a wipe because there were just enough mistakes in there that you're not comfortable with. I mean,
you definitely, like, at a high level of raiding, you definitely get to a point where you kind of like understand like your expectations going in, say like to a final phase. So like if you're trying to like execute a strat, like what's what I'm looking for? Like ignore the like the beam soaks in the last phase of Archimonde, whatever those things are called. I forget now, off the top of my head. Like basically, sack a tank. You really want to try to like go into the last phase with at least a couple reses, so you can ignore that damage and put more damage into the boss. Like kind of like the more you raid, you kind of get the more sense of like, all right, if we don't go into this last phase with 2 reses, you basically just will wipe it. If you or like say if like a DPS randomly dies going into like the last phase, you might also just kind of wipe it because you kind of need everyone alive with a res or 2 going into the last phase. So it's kind of like there's no even point to even try it. So just wipe it and retry it.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, that way you're making the most really out of every pull and not wasting any time. And and can also gives you a better opportunity, I think, too, if you're going to do any kind of analysis to kind of figure out just what went wrong
Well,
as well.
I can also say there was on our Midwinter's Lei Shen kill back in Throne of Thunder. It was basically like just like a common thing for like the top guilds at the time. Like kind of like the ideal like perfect strat was like you had to have at least two reses going into that final phase to res people with static shock to solo soak it, because it was just so much damage and you had to have people solo soak it, and of course some classes can't, so they had to die, so you'd have like reses, especially for the DKs for the grips. Like you ideally wanted to have like at least two reses, and something I can't remember, something happened. We were joking around and like two people randomly died in the first like 10 seconds of the fight, so we only had like one res going into phase 3. And we're like, yeah, fuck it, let's just go. Let's just go. And that ended up being like our kill. We ended up getting like the perfect like RNG of like people getting static shock that could solo soak it. So it was like a minimal amount of deaths in phase 3, and we ended up killing at that pool. So I guess it's just kind of like, just play it out sometimes, I guess.
Right. I guess everybody playing marksman too, Niix. I mean, is that what you're mostly running it right now? Marks, yeah.
100% marks, yeah.
Yeah. So for every encounter too, I take it too, you're not even bothering to look at.
No.
There's no other situations that present themselves.
The only situation I can see in HFC itself is Zul'Harak. I know a lot of hunters will go BM for imp damage, but I never felt the need to do that. I feel like our damage overall just drops so far for kind of mediocre AoE when we could be doing like extraordinary single target to the Void Fiends. So I always stayed marks for progression on that fight.
Yeah, it looks like the top logs right now are BM on Zul'Harak, but it's like not necessarily going to help you progress. It's just going to get you a good log.
It depends on your guild's comp more than anything. If you don't have the AoE for imps or you don't have the stuns, you should be burning them as quick as possible. But with HIJ, who I did Zul'Harak progression with, we had a pretty good comp for that. So me and Brutal, the other hunter, we were able to stay marks for that and just kind of kill the Void Fiends.
What about fights like Iskar if you don't have like solid cleave? I know some hunters in EU guilds were going BM and were doing pretty well.
I mean,
at least back in progression.
The thing about that fight is that a lot of those ads are kind of pointless.
Oh yeah.
The way that a lot of top guilds are doing that fight now is they're nuking the resonance before it even casts chains, so it's effectively heroic with a little bit more damage.
Joke.
So
are you guys doing
that?
Yeah, Midwinter does that.
I know it kind of depends. Like on certain fights, like you may see BMs like a person playing BM spec being like the number one rank on a fight, but like in terms of like the top 10, you may see like 3 people with BM and 7 people marksmanship. So it kind of varies. Like I know Kenny Loggins, he played BM for our first Mythic Manoroth kill. It was to solely basically he was doing like fairly good boss damage and like all the other damage, but he helped out with basically just nuking imps basically.
Yeah.
So I mean, it just kind of varies. Like it's very situational. Like there's only if like at our level, the only 2 or 3 bosses I could see honestly playing BM at like a hardcore like progression level would have been Iskar, Manoroth, and then maybe Zul'Harak if you were. But no, I don't think anyone was doing that strat like early on. It's just kind of like a recent thing where people just stack in melee and just AoE nuke everything. So.
And it looks like there's a few that you actually just can't play BM, even if you're just raiding casually. I know Gorfiend BM is very bugged. You'll lose all of your frenzy stacks anytime you switch realms.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily a bug. It's just the way that
it's just like that's even for like Iron Maidens back in BRF. Whenever your pet despawns, you lose those stacks. So
yeah, it's unfortunate that that's how it is, but it's the way that they've combated stampede bugs and things of that nature. You can't have your pet keep its buffs when it's despawned, or you can just start a fight with 5 stacks of focus fire every single time, and it's a little bit ridiculous, honestly, but it's just the way that they've decided to handle that.
Yeah, there's even been a time where we essentially like our resos were dead, or resos. I don't remember what the specific scenario was, but I remember we got into phase 3 of Mythic Archimon, and we're like, oh my god, we need a res, and I was like, me and Kenny were like, oh, we can res, we got 100 pets, we can pet res, and I was like, oh wait, we got Stampede out. You're gonna have to wait 40 seconds. So
Yeah. And if you Stampede when you don't have Lone Wolf without a pet out, you're stuck without a pet for 40 seconds.
yeah,
So
great game design.
Nice. Yeah. The Lone Wolf and sort of Stampede and all that's kind of, it's awkward at times. I mean, I guess, and everyone's running Lone Wolf too. I mean, or is there cases where focusing shot might be preferred with a pet
anymore?
No.
No.
It was kind of like
it
was focus shot was kind of like a thing like early right as like tier 18 kind of came out.
Yeah.
And it made sense, but like as soon as you started getting more and more geared, Lone Wolf just came better.
That and tier. Like I remember you wanting focusing shot before you had your I think it was 2-set. I'm not sure if it was 2-set or 4-set, where it was just slightly ahead, depending on the fight and play style of your choice.
Yeah. It was after you got 4-piece actually that focusing shot became better. In Sims it became better, not necessarily
Sims,
practice.
yeah.
But not in
Focusing
practice.
Shot was very difficult to use with how high the aimed shot focus cost is. You would have to focusing shot every couple seconds, so you can't move very much. So on fights like, I'm trying to come up with an example. Can't really think of any off the top of my head, but I guess Cormrock would be one of them where you're dodging all the different waves and stuff, and you got to do that and move constantly. There's a lot of time where you just can't shoot. I remember the first week we killed Mythic Cormrock, I was doing runes, and while I was doing runes, I was in range of the boss, but I just had 0 focus because I was using focusing shot for whatever reason.
And then, and what about the Archimon trinket then? I mean, how is that for marksmanship? Is it
It's
better than some of the other stuff? I mean, the for those that may not know, I mean, you basically you get a damage buff based on your distance from your target. So it encourages you to just kind of stand way the hell up back in DPS.
like I think the mythic version is technically 0.4%, or is it? I can't remember what the exact numbers were.
I think it's 0.4,
yeah. Basically, you get a damage increase for each yard you're away from the boss, which makes sense in theory, but some of these bosses' hitbox are like massive, like Gorfiend. You can be sitting in the back of his platform and still only be 20 yards technically from the boss. So I mean, Manoros, another one, has massive hitbox. So like in theory, it would be a good combo if you could. Essentially, according to Sims and the general idea, if you can't maintain like 30 to 35 yards at least always from the boss, it's just you don't get like that much of a damage increase out of it to make it worth over another trinket, basically.
And the 30 to 35 yards is with a mythic version. So
Basically,
the lower quality yours is heroic and normal, you'd have to be 40 or 45 yards away before it would beat another trinket. It's not necessarily that it's bad, it's just that the other trinkets are so much better this tier. Even the coil beats it out.
Yeah, it does.
Actually, the best thing was that our first mythic Archimon kill, I actually coined the damn trinket, and then Kenny coined it the very next week. So it's like great news, like we coin useless items.
Yeah. I mean, it's not bad in concept. I mean, I like the idea of having procs or something specific to, each specialization. I just felt like the one for marksmanship was very, very underwhelming, I guess. I don't want to know that's useless, but it just seemed very, very underwhelming. And for a trinket like that that's coming off a final boss, like you would think it would be designed to just be your best in slot, basically, and just trump everything else.
It's great for BM. And I'm pretty sure it's pretty solid for survival too. Granted, I never actually played it and don't know anybody who actually played survival.
I know it's terrible.
Know what the survival one does.
Oh, it is actually pretty bad. I never actually messed with it.
That's a
What
good
is
Yeah,
this
point,
it
survival
lets
though.
you
trinket?
multi-dot your black arrow.
Oh,
Right.
it resets the
Yeah.
cooldown of Black Arrow.
Yeah.
That's what it does.
With-
I thought
yeah,
that
the
was one of the
chance-
set bonuses.
Have you two tried playing survival and trying to make it competitive at all, or is it just we all just assume dead, GG, rip, screw this?
I theory crafted survival for a total of like 3 hours, and nothing happened.
It's something.
It's just dead in the water right now.
It's something
Well,
I dicked around with like PTR and was instantly just like,
Yeah.
no, just no.
There's just no logical reason why it would be better than marksmanship. With the amount of focus on stuff like priority targets in HFC, like you just can't compete with marksmanship. It's too good. It doesn't have an execute. Its damage is largely based around dots remaining on the target for a long period of time. Like it can't be competitive in the way that they're designing raids right now.
Yeah, oddly enough, I actually had a lot of fun trying to get it to be good with the 4-piece and the class trinket in PTR when we were just sitting in Shatwrath, 5 targets just sitting there trying to see if you could multi-dot well enough that this would be worthwhile.
Yeah.
Solar Flare gave me a few tips like, try it, see if this will help or see if this will make it be better, and just nothing. There's just no way to get it to do good damage. Even after the blanket buffs they gave it, a month
the
in.
funny thing is that the little bug that Survival had that made it so good was that Serpent Sting was proccing multi-strikes, and it was proccing it twice. So if you stacked multi-strike and you got up in the 70s and 80s with trinket procs and stuff, you would be doing a whole lot of damage, especially on AoE too, with Serpent Sting applying the initial tick of Serpent Sting on hit. So you just spammed multi-shot and did pretty solid damage. But when they got rid of that, I don't really know if they listened to the amount of people that were telling them that it was a bad idea and that the only reason survival was good was because of this bug, and there was just no way that they could buff it like to where it would be competitive with the fix that they put on it. It's just impossible.
It's
So-
something. Oh god.
I was going to ask Niix real quick, what would be your opinion on something that could change the survival's mechanics that would make it a more fluid of a spec or more fun of a spec? What would you change to it?
I haven't really thought about that. That's a good question, but honestly, they would have to put the multi-striking back into Serpent Sting. That, as weird as that sounds, like that made it good. It was interesting having a class built off multi-strike like that, and it was kind of cool, but they can't do that just because I guess they don't want to or whatever, but they didn't really need to fix it. So I don't know. That's kind of the only thing that I would say would make it competitive, because if you get rid of that, you would have to buff its single target to ridiculous levels, and just the amount of dots that you can throw out, it would kind of scale really crazy if you let its single target get out of hand. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a whole lot that they can really do with this spec right now. They kind of gutted it going into Warlords, and they kind of refused to give it a cooldown. They took away its execute.
Bear trap. I want my bear trap.
Yeah.
With some comps, it's really great in PvP right now.
Yeah, PvP,
So
it's very good.
It's something to do if you like playing survival.
People who ruin the game. Just saying.
But yeah, and obviously they're not even going to try and fix it. I mean, their solution now is to make it a melee spec altogether going into into Legion. So I mean, any thoughts on that? So is anyone here gonna actually give it a serious go and look to play melee? Yeah.
Oh yeah. All my alts are melee. Like, this is my dream come true.
I don't really have too
I can't
strong
even take
of an
you
opinion.
seriously.
I don't have
What
too
are you
strong of an
talking
opinion
about?
right now, to be honest with you. Like, I think that survival being melee is fine, but we don't really know how good it's going to be yet. Like, Warlords has kind of put an emphasis on ranged classes being a lot stronger. So if they don't do survival correctly, it's just going to fall to the wayside again, and no one's going to play it competitively. But I'm excited, definitely. It's going to be pretty cool to have a melee option.
I mean, we have a 50-50 shot of it being complete dog tier like it is right now, or probably like one of the best specs in the game, because that's just how Blizzard works.
And I mean, if it's bad, nothing really changes. We already can't play it anyways.
Well, that's true. I think the bigger concern is that they overtune it, right? And it's just out of the gate, it's just really overpower OP, and it's better than the other two specs, and then everyone feels like, uh-oh, I've got to now go become a melee player, and they're not sure that they want to do that.
The one thing I hope, and I can just say this because I'm not like a big fan of melee, although like my second favorite tune to play is my DK, but I've been playing him since like start of Wrath, so but I just feel like I'm not gonna really enjoy Hunter at all if survival, like first tier of rating, or like I would say like the first half of the expansion, is the only true like viable spec as a melee. It's just like personally to me, I know like they probably gave into the community somewhat because a lot of people were asking for melee hunters,
right?
But I just feel like being a hunter, just like you're like a range class, you're not really like up in all the shit. Basically, I don't know. Like I play hunter to be a range class, be a mobile range class.
Basically. It would definitely feel weird wearing a spear again and actually using it.
Here's how Legion's theoretically trying to play out, though. Each spec is supposed to play its own like sort of identity. So we have Hunter, right? But there's so many different things a Hunter could be. Like a Hunter could be something that walks in with an axe, a double axe, and just beats the crap out of something with traps and stuff, and an awesome pet. That could be a fantasy to someone. And you know, like it might not be popular to you. You might want to play it for the range, but that's why there's other specs too. What are your predictions for the new melee survival?
Personally, I think that it's gonna be decent enough that some people will be okay playing it if they really, really want to play the melee survival. But the only thing I really feel comfortable like predicting is that there's going to be a little bit of uproar more so than now. Because if it's too good, people are going to complain. Like the people who don't want to play it are going to complain that they feel obligated to play it. And then if it's too bad, the people that want to play it are going to feel like they can't because the other two specs are better. So they can't really win with it, to be completely honest. There's going to be a lot of complaining.
Some people do that right now, technically, though, with how the specs are working right now.
But when they're all the same, who cares if you have to switch?
Well, I mean, like how Marksman plays out, it's a much different playstyle than BM and Survival, and a lot of people don't like that. Oh, not again, Bird.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, it's just really tough to balance it or make it good enough that everybody's gonna like it, you know?
Like in my opinion, like I don't hate like the idea of Survival Hunter. I think it's like a new change of like pace for hunters.
Definitely.
If they could, of course, you know, tuning's never been their strong suit, but if they can give like each hunter spec their kind of like own identity, like per se, and tune it to the point they were for BRF, that'd be awesome. Because for the most part, each of the three specs were very comparable on most fights in BRF. It wasn't like, oh my god, you can only play this one, you can only play like this spec for like these 4 fights, you can only play survival for these 4 fights, and it's just like you could get away with playing literally all 3 specs on each fight.
So in Midwinter, so definitely one of the higher ranking guilds. Do you ask your boomkins to switch to feral or vice versa if it's appropriate for a specific fight, or enhancement shamans to switch to elemental or vice versa?
It's kind of like up to the player. If they know how to play the other specs of their class at a comparable level to what they do in like their main spec, if they feel like they can do better at that spec, because we've had people swap from like melee specs to a range spec of like a druid. Some people swap from like boomkin to feral if it's really OP. It just kind of depends on the fight, and if the person thinks that they can basically make a greater contribution being a different spec, they generally try to like make that knowledge and open.
The thing that's different about those kind of specs is that I guess it's not really that big of a deal now, but hunters will still be agility male, so the gear won't really have to change. Going from a boomkin to a feral, you had to at least get a completely different set of gear, because back when, leather was still set on intellect or agility. You couldn't really change spec and it would change with you. And you also had to get new tier. So now it's a little bit more freedom, I suppose. You only really need a weapon and trinkets. But I guess even then, like, to gear someone for multiple specs, give them multiple weapons, I guess, when you could be giving another pure intellect class an intellect weapon instead of giving a feral druid an intellect weapon so he can go to Boomkin at some point, I guess. Well, I can't really speak for how Midwinter does it personally since I've only been here a couple weeks, but...
Well, speaking of weapons, one of the big changes coming in Legion is these artifact weapons, and we're not really sure. We sort of talked about this a little bit about how this might work, especially now that you're going to have a melee spec in survival, which is going to need its own artifact weapon. And how much time are we going to have to spend farming up and these artifact weapons and keeping them kind of up to date, if you will, in case you need to switch from one spec to another. And we're not sure if that's going to be problematic or not. I mean, you guys have any thoughts on that?
I hope whatever upgrades they have or whatever like system they end up actually implementing for the artifact weapons, that it rolls over to each like version of the weapon, because you have to like get 3 different weapons and then like maintain all that. That's going to be like probably the biggest pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Next to like mop dailies or some shit, I don't know.
Especially if you need multiple specs in one raid. It's going to be a real bad pain in the butt for the pure DPS classes.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's sort of our concern, is that you may end up having to either just sort of bite the bullet and commit to a spec that maybe in the middle of the tier gets nerfed a little bit so it's not where it was or where it ought to be, or you're going to have to just be, questing and doing everything else to kind of keep those artifact weapons current, so you can make that jump. So it could. Oh, go ahead.
I'm worried about pure DPS classes, like in our situation, how that's going to really function, because the most competitive person is going to be trying to make sure they can maintain all 3. So hopefully, it's not a really tedious task.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the deciding factor of what alts I plan on playing in Legion. It's because if it is really hard to maintain multiple artifacts, I'm gonna play one spec the entire tier, and
I mean,
I don't know if that's the best.
It really sucks. Like, you're trying to like push for like really top end kills. So say like in an 11 boss tier, like you kill the first 10 bosses and you're gearing like one spec, and you get to the last boss, and however like the spec is, and however like the strat you decide to do, you're like, oh my god, I could do so much better at this fight at this other, like, say like you go the entire like 10 bosses doing marksmanship, you get to the last boss, you're like, oh my god, this boss would be amazing if I could play BM, but I don't have the like same itemized like weapon. It just like kind of sucks.
Yeah. So it's gonna be kind of weird. We'll have to see how they decide to handle it. I really hope that they don't make like half-assed catch-up mechanics that you can kind of get get your next artifact up to the same level as your first one. It'll only take a month instead of 2. Like, that would suck really bad, having to do that on multiple characters.
It's definitely bizarre that they added this, our male gear has intellect and agility on it, so you don't have to switch, but they've doing all these other things that make it even harder to switch.
Yeah.
And these legendaries, that won't be fun.
Well, even now, I mean, like I said, things are just designed such that marksmanship really is the spec you want to go with if you're raiding. But I mean, if you had situations where you might want to dance between BM and marksmanship, you'd still probably want to consider, multiple sets of gear, just so you'd have one with the optimal secondary stats that, Beast Mastery wants, versus which are different than what marksmanship uses.
Yeah, that was just a weird juxtaposition. I don't know how they decided to make switching easier and emphasize specific stats for a spec at the same time. And they came out with a bunch of stuff. Oh, all the players said we want specific stats that are best. I don't know if they just wasn't communication at Blizzard. It's a weird item.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's where sort of where reforging was really good, and that's where its strength, lied, that you could make those adjustments to your gear whenever needed, and maybe it wasn't 100% perfect, but it was probably good enough that you wouldn't need to carry a couple sets of gear to play these specs. But obviously, I don't think that's going to come back at all ever. So
I'm holding out a little bit of hope that the artifacts are not huge impact on damage, but more of quality of life stuff, and not necessarily raw DPS increases. But I think that that's kind of far-fetched at this point.
I mean, who knows? It's Blizzard. They get like early beta. They could have one like whole idea for artifact weapons, and then like a month before launch, completely just change it. So
yeah, that's true.
Yes.
And that's also why they're being really quiet about their development plans, because they don't want people like getting false promises and then having it all crushed like a month before release.
I feel like most people like don't care. Like if Blizzard says something, they just like stick to it. Nobody like really cares. Like people will always bitch about some shit, but I feel like nobody actually cares if Blizzard just sticks to what they say, and then they just end up like changing it like the next day or some shit.
Yeah.
So they just kind of give us like a general idea what it's gonna be, and kind of stick to that. I don't think a lot of people will really care.
My kind of, I guess, concern is that it's going to be a nightmare to balance around all of that stuff. There's going to be obvious power spikes if they do go the way of actually making the weapons have DPS increases on their little mini trees. There's going to be obvious power spikes that people are going to hit, and some classes are just going to constantly be changing around. It's, from a theory crafting standpoint, it's going to be really weird. Like, I'm curious to see how that's going to work out.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited for that aspect of it, as we haven't had any possibility of really unique combinations since MOP came out. That's when they switched the talent tree, right? Yeah,
I want to say, it
was
Dragon Soul right before MOP, yeah.
Yeah, so that none of our talents now really, maybe Lone Wolf affects, whether you're using Barrage or not to some extent, but there's not a lot of interplay between talents right now. And so, yeah, the theory crafting aspect of it seems really exciting with these new trees or weapon trees. Do we know what they're calling them? Is there a term for that?
I don't know.
Well, whatever it is, I think it'll be fun. I'm sure it will end up being just cookie cutter, like you're saying, but it'll be fun, at least on the beta, when we're just trying to figure it out.
See, I hope there's kind of like you can unlock everything, and then it ends up not being cookie cutter. I hope there's like a DPS tree, and then either stuff that isn't really affecting your damage more than other stuff, or it's just
fun.
You can unlock everything.
Yeah. Can we just bring back like the Wrath talent trees, please?
Yeah, no kidding.
God.
That's right. Especially the early Wrath trees, right, where you could do the BM readiness combo.
Oh my God, that opener was so complicated. It was ridiculous. I remember coming back. I took a break in MSV because my guild broke up, and I went to play with some friends that I played with in Dragon Soul for TOT, and I remember doing Horadon progression because we were stuck on that forever. It was just a casual guild, but I remember doing the opener, and it took like 25 seconds worth of just stuff that you had to do, because you went through your opener once, and then, oh, hey, guess what? Hit readiness, do it all again.
All over again, right?
Awesome.
It was pretty fun, but oh my God. When I came back and realized that our opener was like half a page long, I was like, oh my God, this is insane.
Rip, oh God, what was it? 5.0, 5.1 BM Hunters? Hello? Bring that back.
Yeah.
Blink's Rush. Shit was glorious.
Blink's Rush was so much fun.
Before they nerfed it?
Blink
before
Strikes,
they nerfed it and turned it into a bleed.
It was so good. I just remember doing like arenas, like right at the start of Mop, and then just literally soloing 5 teams with just links like Beast of Wrath, Links Rush, just soloing 5 people.
I love that we're looking back nostalgically about Mop.
I wonder what talent changes are gonna happen with, survival going completely melee, the PvP talents coming in, which gives us so much more room to have a lot more unique and dynamic talents in our entire kit, really. What are your predictions on the changes to come?
I want to say that it's gonna like if anybody plays a mage, you know how when you switch specs, some of your talents just completely change. Like you have Arcane Orb, you have in an Arcane, and then you have Frost Bomb and Frost, and I hope that they do something like that instead of just keeping the talents exactly the same for survival. And I think they will because I hope they get rid of kind of Lone Wolf and adaptation because they've mentioned that they want Marks to be the no pet spec. They want BM to be the pet spec, and then they want survival to be melee with a pet. So I hope that they kind of revamp the talent tree for us a little bit and kind of make it on a per spec basis because there's a lot of talents with marksmanship, Lone Wolf being the best. We can't use Spirit Bond, we can't use Intimidation, can't use stuff like that. So
yeah, and some of those are just such boring talents. I mean, adaptation is, I guess, it's kind of neat at first, but it just, I don't know, it takes a lot of the choice out of your pet, and I don't know, it's the only viable choice for BM. Yeah, that just makes it not interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny because going into the expansion, they said they wanted to put a bigger emphasis on talents that are passive being less useful than the talents that you actually have to use. And as usual, they miserably failed. Lone Wolf is the best for survival and for marksmanship, and for BM, adaptation is the best. So our 100 talent tree is almost entirely passive.
Exactly, and I think adaptation is something that they just might as well get rid of and make that be sort of baseline to the Beast Mastery spec. And I mean, the fact that marksmanship is going to be a petless spec would indicate that they're going to get rid of the Lone Wolf talent, and they're just baking that into that specialization. But as you said, hopefully they'll make some other improvements to marksmanship to kind of account for the other talents that exist that marksmanship just couldn't take advantage of, and maybe I don't know, give them something like the Spirit Bond where you get the healing with the pet, and find some other way to provide that to that spec. Or maybe they'll just make anytime they make the damage better, that's what you're going to gravitate to. They could make it do higher damage, but maybe be a little bit more vulnerable to things. But that's never a good solution for anything. That's how you get people to play 100%, marksmanship all the time and just destroy your other specs.
I hope the 4-piece goes baseline. I hope to God it goes baseline.
It'll probably be into the marksmanship weapon, I'd say. In Dragon Soul, the 4-piece that gave us double focus on our SETI and Cobra Shot, they made that baseline in MOP pretty quickly.
It's like I played my Alt Hunter, it doesn't have 4-piece, and it's like a different marksmanship spec.
Yeah, no, that 4-piece is great. We've wondered about that too, whether or not that's something they would want to just make baseline and make aim shot be instant cast, and because it changes the rotation, it changes the feel of the spec, and it's just so much nicer than having a casted aim shot.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like with the 4-piece, it just feels like the old survival. You're just waiting for a proc and you spam aim shot. I don't know. It's pretty boring spec right now. There's not much complexity to MM, so I can't imagine it staying as is.
It was like CJ Orgrimmar survival, just like spam city basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let me just change gears a little bit, because Delirium, you brought up something you wanted to kind of discuss a little bit on the show today about changes to Warcraft logs and weighted DPS. So what's going on there? Because that looks kind of interesting.
Yeah, this is going to be really great, and it's actually going to overemphasize how amazing marksmanship hunters are. I think a lot of you who might have made the switch to marks for this tier might have thought, not seen some of the benefits that these guys like Niix is talking about, because you might not be doing the top DPS in your raid, but you're usually doing the most important DPS. And I think that's the emphasis that Niix and Azertharian were making in their guides as to why MM's so great right now. And so what Kira, who runs Warcraft logs, what he's added in is called weighted DPS. And so priority targets, damage that's done against priority targets in a fight will be weighted as worth more than trash targets that are just going to die in a few moments anyways. So I think he gave a few examples, like the imp packs on Manaroth. They're not going to be doing a bunch of damage to them. It's just basically padding your numbers, so you don't get as much value out of that. But a ad like the Doomfire on Archimond will get you a much higher value, because that needs to die pretty fast. The Death Caller on Archimond, it's got to die pretty quick, so it gets a higher value and your logs will reflect as having higher DPS when you switch to those priority ads faster. As I don't know, I think it's a really great feature. It looks like eventually he's going to add it in so the weights are customizable. So your raid leader can say, this is what we need to work on, and look at who's doing the best with that. But for now, it's just some kind of basic stuff that he set in there. And I think we've got about a week before he applies this to the rankings. And this is going to, he's going to have separate rankings for people who are focusing on priority ads and things like that, instead of trying to rank by, just padding your meters.
This is the first I'm hearing of that, and that's pretty awesome, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm really excited, especially from the way MM works right now. It's like it's custom built for us. It's just made to show how amazing MM really is right now.
And I wonder, I don't know if what impact this might have on. It's a really good idea because it emphasizes, sort of doing these fights correctly, if you will, and especially if you can drill down and see you can already see who's doing what on what target. Right. But now if it's easier to kind of pull that information out there and add some value to it, I think that's really, really beneficial to those groups that run logs, which is a lot of people, which is most everybody.
Yeah, and I imagine any raid leader who really knew what they were doing was already looking at these things in the logs. It just makes it much quicker, much easier to see at a glance. If you're live logging, you can look in your other monitor. Okay, this is what the weighted DPS looks like, as opposed to who's padding and not. You don't have to click on the individual targets and see who's doing the most against the Death Caller and who's doing the most against the Doomfires and who's just killing, whoever those demon dogs are. I don't remember what they're called. But it just makes it easier at a glance. And I'll be really curious to see how it works with the rankings. I think he's looking for feedback as to what the weights should be, who the more important high priority ads should be on different fights. But yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, because I think back to even that first fight, that the Hellfire Assault. When we first started doing it, we were struggling with it, and the reason for that was we had some folks that were just going AOE crazy. So they had high DPS numbers, but they were popping all the Fellcasters and everything because of the AOE, and it was just a mess. So we were getting crushed until we were able to convince people to hold back on AOE and single target these priority ads so that we could, kind of control things and get through it. And I see how this kind of information in there and emphasis on that would be helpful, to kind of point out those things.
Yeah, so if you're even if you're in a more casual guild, I think listeners out there, bring this up to your raid leader and, if you need justification for playing a single target spec, even if it's not doing as much overall damage, this will show why it's more important damage and why it's helping your raid more.
And this is live now, or is he just sort of more or less testing it?
Yeah, so if you look at any of your logs, like if you just go to, DPS for whatever fight your guild did, there are some options kind of in the top right corner, and you can turn it on right now for weighted DPS. It's not live with the rankings yet, but you can use his preset weights to see how your guild's doing right now. I think that went live last night, maybe.
Okay, so it's very, very, very new. That's very, very cool. Very cool. Oh, and one thing that Synth mentioned in our Skype chat here was regarding the artifact weapons. So it sounds like you're going to be able to unlock all the points available in those trees for the weapon, but you just a matter of choosing which order that you wish to do that. But it does sound like you'll be able to get everything for those weapons, which is cool. At least that's I think what they announced for now. Who knows? Any of this stuff could change, once beta arrives.
Alpha, beta,
Yeah.
potato, tomato.
Same thing.
Anyone have predictions? Have we done predictions on this yet?
I don't think we have.
Get your bets ready.
I think
Predictions
they're
on
gonna
what?
try on when they're gonna release the beta.
BlizzCon?
No.
I think they're trying to do a No,
It's
I
gonna
feel
be
like with this expansion
late
they're gonna try to
November.
push it. Yeah, November sounds right.
Like late November for like.
Wait, that's when
Friends and
BlizzCon is,
family?
isn't it?
Oh, it's BlizzCon's beginning.
Yeah, BlizzCon's like the first week in November
They're gonna-
7th or something.
They're
like
gonna
that.
release it like a couple weeks after BlizzCon, like early beta, like basically like alpha, and then probably more get into it like in February, March timeframe. And then we're looking at like a release of like like basically like springtime. Would feel about right.
Let me grab one more beer. I'll be right back.
Oh, you didn't come prepared? What the?
Need a cooler by your desk.
I know, I do. It's a problem.
Drinking on my Illidan Blizzard cup right now.
Yeah, I think a post BlizzCon, maybe like you said, maybe I'll guess a little bit sooner. I'd say like the right after BlizzCon's over, they'll start things up. Maybe following that week.
I feel like they're gonna drop like the meat and potatoes at BlizzCon. Maybe have like a very small section of playable beta available at BlizzCon. Maybe, I don't know.
I would say we'd get to do like the first couple quests of the Demon Hunter starting zone.
Yeah,
at
like
the,
maybe
BlizzCon.
like some Demon Hunter shit. But I feel like a late November release would be maybe about right. And then it's gonna be roughly 5 to 6 months after that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people feel like a sort of a springtime release for Legion makes a lot of sense. It's still a long ways off, though. I have to say, even with beta, and if you get into beta, it's something to do, but it's a long time between now and then for this next expansion.
I mean, it's kind of custom. Like people are always going to be hating, like, "Oh my god, I don't want to do this tier for a year." But it's like expansions take time to like make and then test and then raid content and tuning and bugs and it's all this other shit. So
I hope they kind of take their time bringing it out. Honestly, like Warlords felt rushed.
Yeah. Warlords did feel rushed, and then we only had like 2 tiers. And honestly, I feel like that's the leading cause of.
Same.
Because of how short like this expansion felt. Like a year ago we were in Siege, guys. Think about that. And now we're already talking about another expansion.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
But I'm excited for Legion because it sounds like a lot of fan service, but it sounds like they're trying to do it right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like Warlords was like, okay, cool, Warlords, but Legion's like, oh my god, Emerald Dream Demon Hunter hype,
Yeah, Warlords didn't seem very I guess, necessary lore-wise. The entire expansion could have been summed up by a cinematic.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like we really accomplished much.
Yeah, I read somebody said that all of Warlords should have been just like a dungeon in the time walking, or what are they, Caverns of Time.
Caverns of Time, yeah.
That would have totally taken care of Warlords.
I feel like this is a bit harsh to say, but I feel like, just kind of like an in general statement, like not going like too deep into this, but I feel like Warlords is basically like the dragon soul of expansions. It's just like, you got to have one shitty one and learn from it, and then kind of build up from that.
Well, that seems to be, you had Burning Crusade, which was really good. That was the first expansion, and then Wrath of the Lich King, which came after that, I thought was
amazing.
Yeah, I thought it was better than Burning Crusade, and then you had Cataclysm, which was a down expansion.
It wasn't bad.
It started off really good.
Yeah.
And then just went downhill from there.
Well, hopefully Legion isn't like that, because I have a lot of expectations for it. I think everyone does, especially with how the sub numbers have been working out and how garrisons turned out. Unfortunately, were a big factor in people quitting because there's something to do outside of raiding. Like, I'm bored.
Yeah, I think that was part of the problem too. I think so much time, energy, and effort went into the garrison feature, and it was good for some things, but it just sort of made. And I love all these sort of quality of life things. I like it when certain things are easy to do and you don't have to waste time. But it just made some things just too easy. And like I said, you never had to set foot outside your garrison other than to go raid.
I mean, I just had this drunk Skype call, technically like this morning with Sloot, and it basically had like the exact same conversation. It's like if you take out raiding from Warlords, this was a pretty bad expansion. You just take out like the raiding aspect of it. There was a lot of stuff to do at the beginning because you were trying to like do alts and do all this other stuff, but like after like initial rush of like stuff, there was nothing to do. They just like front loaded everything, and then the rest of the expansion there wasn't really much.
Yeah, and even the Tannan jungle, I mean, that's been okay, but I feel like I'm more or less done with that even at this point. There's not too much reason for me that I feel like I have to go in there every day and do stuff there.
It was much bigger than the Timeless Isle and didn't seem to accomplish nearly as much fun as the Timeless Isle did.
I had a lot of fun in the Timeless Isle.
Yeah, I did too. And Tannan was just, the Timeless Isle Part 2, and it just didn't, I don't know, it just didn't sink in as well. I'm not sure how it could have been better or why I liked the Timeless Isle more, but meh.
Well, Timeless Isle had the really awesome PvP features, the rares that were always up, and I feel like the smaller density of the island as well, like, made it so people were more together. If that makes sense, like people were always running around doing rares, people were always doing the pet stuff, people were PvPing and doing the same faction PvP stuff was honestly a lot of fun. Messing with people as Hunter, oh, it was great. I'm talking like explosive trapping people off cliffs, dude.
That was so much fun to troll on that island. I think if I wasn't raiding like the one night clear, I spent most time on the isle just trolling.
But that's what made that expansion good, is they had alternative stuff that was really fun to do outside of raiding. What are we doing outside of WoD right now? Like, what are you two doing right now that isn't raiding?
Playing Destiny. That's not WoW.
I'm currently AFK in my garrison. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm AFK on my character screen. I don't play. I log on raid Tuesday and then I get off for the rest.
I don't know. It kind of cycles. Like after progression, I tend to like take a lot of time to like catch up on like movie series or like binge watch like shows, and then like play some other games, and then you're kind of bored for a little while, and then it's like, oh, the next tier's out or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like right now it's kind of tough to be motivated to raid. At least me personally, just because we don't know when the like next expansion's coming out. We don't have any new information. It's hard to stay, I guess, interested. I'm just speaking from my own point of view. I've been struggling recently to be interested in raiding.
I don't think that's an unfair point of view, though. I think it's a view that a lot of top-end raiders have felt for a long time.
Yeah.
In this expansion, especially. I mean, look at all the countless of guilds that have just died or reformed, or just in the reform part just comes with, again, a lot of new people.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Kind of the shift from the MOP dailies to what we have now. I think one of my guild mates is a programmer, and he was commenting on how with a lot of his stuff, he would much rather people be complaining about feeling obligated they needed to do something rather than not doing anything at all. It was a much better problem to have that we felt like we needed to do too many dailies and maybe they weren't as much fun, but that's still better than not wanting to log in. And that's kind of just where we are now. There's
I feel like
not much reason to log in.
Yeah, I feel like having some. I mean, it sucks for some of us, but I mean, like as a general statement, I feel like having too much stuff to do is way better than being like, oh, I can knock out my entire week's worth of stuff in 2 hours. Okay, I'm done for the week. So, I feel like more stuff loaded onto you is, I think, more fun because it just you're constantly always doing stuff, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and it keeps you engaged in the game. So hopefully, Legion will make up for that now. I mean, we'll be getting back to Azeroth, and I mean, Dalaran will be the sort of the capital city once again. I'd be curious to see what they change with that, or if they just sort of use the current version of Dalaran, or if they give us something a little different. I don't know.
Be interesting. I wonder what happens when we go to Northrend. Is there just going to be nothing?
Right? You take the portal, you fall to the ground, you see your death because the city's not there. They moved it someplace
again.
else.
They moved it again.
But it does seem to be with Dalaran coming to the mix, they're trying to combine a little bit of the themes from Wrath of the Lich King and Burning Crusade. They're doing a little bit of combining there, which could be good, capitalizing on two of their best expansions. So we're getting to the end of our hour here. We did have one question from the chat room today, and maybe this would be a good one for you, Nixie, or anyone can answer. But this is from Glacier Wolf, and wanted to know, what 2 or 3 trinkets would you choose for marksmanship?
The only 2 that I would consider using for progression are the Mirror of the Blade Master and the Fellspring Coil.
Mm-hmm.
The other kind of third one that's up in the air is the Malicious Sensor, and the reason I say that is because it's a RPPM trinket, and with the focus this tier on a lot of priority targets, Fellspring Coil is a little bit more consistent, so if there's a lot of targets coming at you steadily over the course of the fight, you're going to want something that's up for every single one of them. And if you don't have a sensor proc when one of those spawns, your damage is going to be a little bit less overall. However, the sensor does net you a little bit higher overall damage, on everything, as opposed to giving you a little bit less but more consistent damage on priority targets. So I would just grab all 3 of them, honestly. Azertharion has some trinket sims kind of ranking the different difficulties on his guide. I'm sure if you Google Azertharion's Hunter Guide, something will come up, and yeah. So just get all 3 of them, kind of look at that to see the different item levels, because not everyone can get everything mythic. But yeah.
Yeah, and they are different item levels too. I mean, certainly even within the Hellfire Citadel, I mean, the Fellspring Coil, I think it will definitely be a lower item level, even on the same tier, if you will, as the Malicious Sensor. Just that one drops off much later in the instance. So there is a difference in item level there.
And that's been kind of annoying for doing sims, because the differences in item level has made people question, kind of like, hey, I have a heroic sensor and a mythic Fellspring Coil. Fellspring Coil's higher item level, but it doesn't feel as good. It's not an agility proc, but it is a very, very good trinket, contrary to what you might believe. I use that trinket since I'm trialing with Midwinter. I want to do more consistent damage as opposed to getting lucky and unlucky sometimes. But it puts me at 53.3% crit, so I'm fully capped out on crit, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's definitely an underrated trinket for being so uninteresting. It's very, very powerful.
Sensor's kind of like the trinket. It's like you can go from feeling like a god on one pull because you just like nuked everything, and then the next pull you're like 15th on damage because you didn't get really any procs when the ads were up or something.
Yeah.
So.
Or when the ring comes up, you get a trinket proc right before you guys pop the ring. You're gonna do crazy damage, and then you line Thrill the Hunt RNG on top of that, and you do some crazy numbers.
Or you just get my luck and both get a trinket proc and a throw proc right after ring goes off and get nothing during it.
Yep.
That's generally how it goes for me.
Cool. Well, I mean, does anyone have any other topics they want to bring up? Otherwise, I think we can probably close out this week of the show, but go ahead.
We had one more question from the chat room. BM Yeager asked, do you guys think the multiple item levels in the same difficulty was a successful experiment, or overall it's been kind of a failure?
I mean, some people are gonna like the higher item levels from like the harder bosses get better loot from the harder bosses. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but personally for me, I'm kind of against the increasing item level because it's like if you have a mythic piece that mostly like almost in every case should be the better piece to wear, but it's like but it's like not that much item level difference between like a heroic version of a better trinket. So it's like I don't know.
It's honestly just created nothing but confusion from my point of view. Is people are seeing gear that's 725 and then they see something that's 730, but the 725 has the better stats on it. A lot of the times people will kind of forget that even your worst stats hold weight in damage. It might not be as much as crit, but if you just have more of the worst, like your worst stats, if they hold enough weight, they're gonna still be better.
That was kind of my annoyance while progressing. Is so I might get a higher item level piece that simmed me higher, so I'm going to do more damage, at least single target damage, but it has less crit, so it's just less fun to play. It doesn't feel as smooth, when you have those as when you have higher crit and you can get the more fun procs.
And the number one example of this is actually perfect. It's the Iron Reaver belt and the Fell Lord belt.
Yeah.
The Fell Lord belt has haste and mastery, which are arguably two of our worst stats. And the Fell Reaver belt has, I think, crit and multi-strike, two of our best stats.
It does. It looks nice on paper for sure.
And there's a 20 item level difference. So people say, you know what? Go with the crit multi-strike. It's your best stat.
10.
But the Fell Lord belt is actually better than the Fell Reaver belt.
Unless you can get like the Reaver one, like Warforged.
Yes, you get it Warforged or Socket, and that just opens up a whole different issue. Is the Warforged and the Socket stuff being RNG, just making gearing choices so much more complicated and annoying. I get a lot of trinket questions this tier because of the 4 different types of trinkets that we have. There's not just, this is a crit proc, this is a haste proc, this is a multi-strike proc on use trinket like last tier was. They're actually different this tier, so that's a lot of the questions I get, and then it's kind of tough to answer because someone will say, I have a heroic Warforged coil, but I have a mythic with a socket sensor, and I'm like, dude, I don't stop. Like, it's just a lot of different stuff that you have to kind of figure out.
Yeah, I didn't care for the multiple items levels within the same sort of tier in that instance, especially when you had, as you say, Warforged and sockets to already kind of differentiate that gear. And I certainly didn't like the fact that a lot of people a lot of classes had their weapons drop off of Archimond, whereas we were stuck on Manoros, so they were all getting a higher item level weapon than what we could possibly get. That kind of bugged me a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that if they want to do that in the future and do it successfully, every single person needs to get a weapon at the same point
Yeah.
in the rate. I know
So don't
that's
you-
weird, but there's just you can't have people getting 725 weapons while some other people are getting 730 weapons. It's just it doesn't work.
The weapon thing really kind of threw me off because, yeah, you're absolutely right about, you know, the item level on weapons and et cetera, et cetera. So, do you think artifacts will help that out at all next expansion?
Definitely. I'm what is it? 4 months into the tier coming up on maybe 3, I don't know. But I've yet to get a 730 weapon. I still don't have a mythic Manaroth's bow.
Story of
And-
our lives.
And in Siege, I didn't get a Warforged weapon for the entire duration of farm.
Oh.
I had 160 kills of all
Don't-
of the weapon dropping bosses.
Don't even
Fine.
start. Don't even start on Warforged weapons. Oh, for
Azur got one, and he linked
Okay.
a picture of it to
For
me, and I got kind of mad.
literally every weapon boss in Heimel, BRF, and in Hellfire, for every kill for Midwinter, we have never, this entire expansion, never seen a Warforged hunter weapon. Not a single one at any time.
The thing that always happens to me is that I'll get a Warforged drop, but it'll be heroic, and then we go into Mythic, and we're like, oh well, where are the weapon drops? I got a heroic Warforged Gallicrast bow week 1, and then didn't see a Warforged weapon all of heroic.
That's like the worst one.
It was terrible.
Gallicrast was like the worst one.
Gallicrast was the haste mastery one.
Yeah.
When we were playing survival,
The Paragon bow was crit.
Paragon bow was
Ace-
really
yeah.
good.
Paragon bow was delicious.
Yeah, the Paragon bow was good. I can't remember what the
It
big
was
work
crit
when he
mastery.
dropped the gun that
It was
dropped.
crit mastery, but it was
Crit mastery,
had like
and
the
then
most secondary
crossbow,
strats.
The crossbow had hit and crit on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was so bad.
The hit and crit one was so awful.
Was it hit and crit? I thought it was hit and haste.
But we had
Oh,
reforging too.
It might have been hit and
About it.
haste actually.
It was something really bad.
It was
I
bad.
think
Doesn't
I think it was hit and haste.
Might as well have just been hit.
But we had
Oh, hit.
reforging too, so it was actually kind of okay to have like
Mm-hmm.
that because I mean, you just reforge it, and then you would need, I don't know. I kind of miss the whole concept of reforging personally. I feel like with how specs play out in this expansion, it would have been really, really fun to play with.
Yeah, I think that I want to say someone mentioned this actually in the chat, in our little Skype chat before we went live. They were saying that the only reason that reforging was bad was because of hit and expertise, and with the removal of that, reforging would have been a lot better.
Yeah,
Well, I
it's
think that's
definitely more
true.
interesting.
Because that's primarily what you ended up using reforging for. At least that's what I thought. To balance out your crit and expertise, and then after that, it was to move around crit or whatever else you needed for your other secondary stats. But that seems like to be the primary use, was to balance out the hit and the expertise.
I can't remember if it was Watcher or which of the devs, but one of them, they were talking and they said they want it to be exciting when you get a drop. They don't want it to feel like a chore. Like, okay, now I have to go enchant and gem and reforge this before I can use it. But what they kind of ended up doing is making most of them not exciting at all, because I don't really want this one. So what could have been like exciting because I could at least get decent stats on it, and now it's just kind of meh. I'll pass.
I like the idea of like being able to play around with stats, and even within a certain spec, you can kind of go a different play style depending on how much like of one stat you try to stack. Basically, like I like that kind of like concept of playing around with stats, but like to the level in the chart, like even if it was even like no, I still don't like, even though it's a slight upgrade, I still wouldn't want it because of the stats on it. Type shit. So
I think that a lot of the gearing is now, oh, it's not Warforged. Oh well, I'll wait till next week. Like they kind of took the excitement away from gearing entirely and just kind of tossed it into a 10% chance for a piece to be slightly better than another piece. And with stuff like trinkets, it's such a huge increase. The the Warforged is so much more important than, say, if you get a Warforged on a belt or something like that. And then weapons are just, for some classes, so far above everything else. Like for marksmanship, it's an insane amount of extra damage just by getting kind of RNG.
Like a 5 extra item level weapon, basically.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, did we have any other questions from the chat room today? I don't think so. So, well, why don't we wrap this up? And if anyone wants to, continue on talking and do a post show, that's fine. But on that note, you have been listening to episode 226 of the Hunting Party Podcast. I'm Darkbrew from thebrewhall.com and the Brew Hall on Twitter.
I'm Delirium from thrillofthewild.com and at Delirium Hunts on Twitter.
And I'm Artemis Howell from the Warcraft Hunter Union and at Artemis Howell on Twitter.
All right. Check us out on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or add our RSS feed to your reader, and we'll have all these links in our show notes.
If you have a question or a topic you would like us to announce on the show, email us at thehuntingpartypodcast@gmail.com or send us a tweet at huntingpartypod.
All right. Stay thirsty, my friends, and remember to drink your dark brew lager.
Siempre prestar la emoción de lo salvaje.
Don't forget to pay your dues. Adaption!
Adaptation? What?
And order your hunter shirts.
For the Horde.
Yes, and order your hunter shirts, everyone. They're awesome. Cool. And special thanks to you guys, Clip and Niix, for joining us this week. It was a pleasure talking to you, and it was nice to finally get some guests on here and do some real hunter chatting for a change. It's been quiet the last couple of shows, so this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been it's been interesting. It's been fun. I like it.
Anytime.
Cool. Thanks, chat room.
Thanks, chat room. Adaptation.
That's just the cost of being awesome sauce. I'm a dues payer, a boss slayer. I rock out with my lockout cause I can jump shot. BM, MM, and SB. I can rock out any tree. Never worried about my threat, cause I've got FD and misdirect. Catching loose mobs in my traps. I never miss, cause I am hit capped. Cause I'm the hunter, not the marked. I'm the fighter, not the spark. I'm the kiter, not the kite. I'll top meters every fight. Raiding and cave dealing death. Just me, my gun, and my trusty bed. Now let's begin with Illidan, Osirian, and Gil'jaden, Magdamar, Asgalor, Gruul, Cthulhu, and Razorgore, Onyxia to Ragnaros. Which one have we killed the most? Kel'Thuzad to Malagos. We even killed a Kama's ghost. Feels like we're getting close, all that running as a ghost. Yogg-Saron, Thorian, Sartharian, Magthuridon, Saphiron, Lucifer to Sulfuron, Archivon, Amalon, Koromon, and Algalon. The faction champions, the death toll rolling on and on. Gar, Veil, Executus, Chromagus, and Charixus. Mourn, Lure, kill this. We won't stop and kill our thoughts. I'm a hunter.